I just realized I was muted the whole time, so I'm going to start over again. So sorry. And thank you so much, Mr. Crow, for letting me know that. So welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about global perspective things, and the original idea was to have a lot of my different friends from different corners of the world all come together and have a discussion about the things that are happening right now, uh, and that have been happening in 2020 in this crazy year that we've had. But it's problematic because in all those different corners of the world, we're in different time zones. And so for a lot of people that I wanted to have on now, it's the middle of the night or early in the morning, like 2 o'clock in the morning. And so I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. But I do have a dear friend who has agreed to come on the program today. She's been on the program before, but it has been a minute. And I'm excited to talk to her about a number of different things, to ask her. And I think she has questions to ask as well. And she is an incredible human being. She's so talented. She's a professional opera singer, actress, musician, educator, and so much more. And I'm excited to welcome back from Cape Town, South Africa, my friend, Miss Christine Bam. Hi, how are you?
Hey there, I'm good and you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. What time is
Of
it there?
course. It's 10 o'clock at night, so 10 p.m.
10 p.m. Okay, and it's 2 p.m. here in the afternoon. So yeah, again, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. So, for those that don't know, can you just kind of give? I mean, I kind of just introduced you, but can you give them a better introduction of yourself? You know, of who you are and what you do.
My name is Christine Bam. I'm 28 years old and I'm a mezzo soprano from Cape Town. I sing for the Cape Town Opera Chorus. And before this became my full time work, I was a music educator at high schools and primary schools. And I also started two choirs in Cape Town. One was a school choir and one was a community choir.
That's awesome. Great. So, um, we we're friends, and we met a few years ago, and uh, have stayed in communication, and we often just talk about things that are happening in our lives and that are going on, and just compare stories and and all of that, right? Um, and so clearly there are a lot of things going on in the world, and one of the things that we were talking about off air before we went live was the idea that depending, like, I guess the impression you get about, like, for instance, what you hear about what's going on in America will sometimes depend on who you're talking to and where they are, right?
Yeah, definitely. I have friends in different parts of America. And I mean, speaking as someone that's never been there, it kind of is, tough to differentiate from what, like, how far that is apart, etc. But um, I find that the stories are different to what we might be reading in the local newspapers or online, things like that.
Right. So, I'm curious. Let's start with the pandemic, right? Let's start with COVID. So, for you, um, and this is another thing we were talking about, was that the last time I had you on the show, for you, um, lockdown was just about to begin,
Yeah.
right? And for us, I think we'd already been into some form of adjustment or lockdown or something for a couple of months or something like that.
Yes.
Right. So, what has transpired since then, where you are?
So, so the last time we spoke, I just finished a choir festival that I plan every year with like 2,500 audience members. It's outside. It's lovely. 12 choirs from the Western Cape area, and I remember like the week before the festival started, getting phone calls about, "Have you heard about the coronavirus? Is the will the festival go ahead?" And we were all like, of course it would. And I remember emailing the Department of Health asking, is it fine? And they're like, yeah, it's nothing to worry about. Sure, go for it. And that was on the Saturday, and the Sunday, literally the next day, it was on the Thursday. Sorry, it was on the Thursday, and literally on the Sunday, our president spoke on TV to all of us and radio stations to say we're going into lockdown. So it went from it's not really something to, oh my goodness, okay, it's here. We didn't expect it. I mean, you kind of feel like it's so far removed from South Africa. But it was already here by that time. And we went into lockdown, a very strict lockdown. So staying at home, I remember running around the pool like 200 times a day to try and get in exercise and work out. It was kind of crazy. It's weird to think back and think, oh, that was 5 months ago. It's weird to think that. I work for an amazing company, and we could get vocal coachings online, and it was really accessible to get help vocally and keep working on yourself during this time. I also tried to do some theory lessons for students that were still interested, because the schools had also closed. Anyways, not too long after that, we took extreme precautions everywhere, of course, wearing masks, sanitizing. My sister, when the schools opened, I mean, she would not come into the house with her work clothes, things like that. I still got COVID. I was really sick.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, I was, but I didn't have to go to hospital. So I was really sick, but like luckily not sick enough to have to leave the house. So I stayed in my room, isolated from the household and from infecting anyone. And not long after that, the lockdown, like, it was easier. You could do more things. We started working again. It was just amazing to actually see people and see my colleagues. My colleagues are extremely dear to me. And now we're on level 1 lockdown. So when it was a strict lockdown, it was level 5. We're on level 1 now. And I mean, the president spoke on Wednesday, and our the restrictions are way less. So it's just wear your mask. There's certain restrictions to bigger gatherings, and especially that still has an effect, of course, on artists. But
Right.
most of the economy has opened, and also South Africa's borders are open again. So obviously pending a COVID test result. But I mean, so we've kind of moved out of most of the lockdown things.
Interesting. And how long was the phase going from 5 to 1?
Um, that's a good question. I can't give you exact amounts of time, but level 5 was for quite a while. I think it was definitely more than a month of not leaving the house, not going to work, um, only being allowed to go out of the house when you need to go do shopping, which shouldn't have been every day, those things. That was definitely more than a month. And then there was curfews in place, like if you need to go to the shop, this would be your curfew, etc. And after that, it eased quite significantly. From there, it went down to schools can reopen at 50% of the school's capacity. And yeah, it became easier, faster after the heavy lockdown than
Mm,
I would have thought, or well, not thought. If you look at other countries, like, but our cases really went down a lot. Our testing also significantly got less. So I'm not 100% sure
mhm.
how sure you can be of the totals that we get in, but according to what we get, it really significantly got less.
Wow.
Yeah.
So with So when schools returned, and you say it was a 50% capacity, did that mean that half the students would go on certain days and half the students would go on other days?
Yes, exactly. So the students got the same hours of education. So, for example, student A would go on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the next week on the Tuesday and the Thursday, which means student B would have the same days, just reversed.
I see. I see.
And also, most schools supposedly kept teaching online, but that is also, it's not really possible with the infrastructure that South Africa has with our education. We don't have access to everything, and like a lot of countries, I mean, you don't have that kind of plan in place for if you get a pandemic. So, but yeah, when the schools could open to 50% capacity, it really, people jumped on. Kids needed to go to school, and they wanted to go back to school mostly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of the same thing here. There's been the great debate as to which thing is worse, the pandemic or the measures that we take. The
Yeah.
impact on being home and separated and isolated, like which one's worse. Um, I personally argue that if the pandemic can possibly result in death, I'd rather be isolated and deal with those issues than to not be here. You know what I mean? Um,
Of course.
but yeah.
Of course.
Did you experience any of that over? Like, was there a resistance from the citizens of Cape Town and South Africa in general?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, in a lot of our communities, it's simply impossible to distance. We have families of like 12 people living together in a 1 or 2 bedroom house. It's just impossible. So I don't think it was resistance because a lot of people didn't want to do it. It was more resistance of how do you expect us to do it? However, our government, we have a very big, very high rate of joblessness. I'm not sure if that's
Mm,
correct, but and a lot of people out on the streets, and I know that they were given some form of shelter, so I feel like our country and our government really did an amazing job looking at other countries, and you think, oh, South Africa is like, it's not at the top of the list when you think of disaster management or anything, but I think what we are told is that South Africa did really well. And when we look at it, at the moment, our biggest struggle is really the to get the economy back and running. Because I mean, I look at my artist friends, and they suffered. They're still suffering. There's no jobs. There isn't concerts. Like, we actually just did the first live opera performance, and I mean, it was tough. It was really tough. And but for most of it, people tried. I mean, I don't think anybody really wants to get sick. Um, but I did have a weird run in with someone at the shop where I was standing outside just making sure, okay, my mask is on, waiting for my mother to come into the shop, make sure her mask is on. I have the sanitizer ready. And the lady she was like, why are you putting on your mask? And I said, well, except for that being the rule, you should. You don't want to get sick. And she was very convinced that uh, there wasn't something like coronavirus. So, I mean, there are actually
mm,
people who really believes that. So, and you won't change their minds. You won't. That's a big thing.
right.
So, you must take the precautions for yourself. But I also want to ask you how it was there, because we saw a lot of videos trending on social media, um, that there were not really so many lockdown restrictions that we were aware of that you might have had. Like, it's a lot of people gathering in parks, and you could still go for runs, and you could still do anything. Is that true? Was it like that?
I think largely it depends on where you were. So in
Okay.
certain places, like for instance, I'll give you the example of Florida. I don't know how familiar you are with our geography, but in Florida, the governor was basically for a long period of time treated it as if there was no pandemic.
Wow.
So people could go to the beaches, they could do whatever, and there were, Florida is very much like a tourist kind of area, like
Yeah.
some of Cape Town is like
Yes.
that with the beaches and all of that, right? So a lot of it's like that. So it's right there in the oceans and the Gulf and all of that, and so they're used to people, especially young people, coming and congregating on the beaches and swimming and surfing and and all that stuff. And so I don't know how much of that decision was an economic decision, because they didn't want to lose those dollars that they
Yeah.
rely on. But yeah, for a long time, that was like a lot of us were looking at the news and seeing their resistance to it and
Yeah.
thinking, what are you doing? And they're like, no, there's no problem. And then, of course, like weeks later, all of a sudden, they're reporting new cases like crazy and they had to shut down, you know,
Yeah.
to some degree. So there's just been a lot of that, of the up and down. And some of it has to do with, um, uh, I guess I'll say misinformation, because it depends on where you get your information, right? It
Yeah.
depends on the source of your information. And like you just said, there are some people who believe that it's no big deal or it's not real. It's some political gimmick to
Yeah.
get control of the country or something, right? And so they deny it. And so if that's where you get your information, and if those are the people you trust and that's the source you trust, then
Yeah.
you're going to respond accordingly, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, we're listening, in my case, I try to listen to as many sources as possible, but really listening to the experts, to the doctors and scientists who were telling us, no, you need to wear a mask, you need to practice social distancing, you need to just do some smart things, to try to prevent the spread of it. And I
Yeah.
think that coupled with, I'm kind of going beyond what you asked me, but just to say that, um, for me, years before, I think I want to say it was 2010 was the first time I went to Japan. And in Japan, it's very customary to see people walking around with masks. Has been
Yeah.
for decades, right? I mean, and probably longer, right? And so, um, um, oh, that's funny. Okay, so I'll get to that one second. So, yeah, so I already had the perception because I remember asking, well, why are they wearing a mask? And I said, is it they're afraid they're going to catch something? Like I thought maybe they were like, do you know what a germaphobe is?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So I thought maybe they were, germaphobes and just afraid that they'll touching anything, whatever. And the response I got from the people I spoke to was, no, they're protecting everyone else because oftentimes
But
when they're
isn't that amazing?
yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that was beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
that kind of idea of like, no, I want to protect you, so I'm going to wear a mask to because I know
Yeah.
I have to interact with people, so I'm going to try to protect you. So I already kind of had that drilled into my head years and years and years before this ever came
Wow.
about. So when they started talking about wearing masks, it made perfect sense to me. Like, of course.
Yeah.
But for others who didn't have that experience, they thought it was an infringement on their rights. Like, what do you mean you're taking away
Yeah.
my rights? And it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And like, I'm like, okay, well, and I'd worn masks before, in Japan. I'd done it
Mhm.
before myself. So it was no big deal. So it's interesting. I think so much of it's about perspective, right? In terms
Yeah.
of how you see it and how you respond.
I have friends in China, and I'm sure they will end up watching this. And I remember we spoke about especially about the mask, because I was like, how am I supposed to sing with this? How must I jog? when I want to go jog, how must I do it? And she told me, Shana is her name. She told me, you either do it or you'll get sick. So put on the mask. People here walk with a mask like it's normal. It's kind of weird if you don't wear a mask. And I think it changed my whole perception of it's a struggle. It's not. It's really not a struggle. Like, yes, it's
Right.
something to get used to. But
Exactly.
if you think how that can stop the spread, it's crazy. Like, wear the mask.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you sick. Wear the mask.
Especially when you think of it in terms of think about the things that we do in the short term to help us in the long term, right?
Yeah,
So, and
exactly.
that's one of the reasons we're now experiencing this huge uptick is because so many people didn't do it, and
Yeah.
still aren't following those guidelines. And so now the numbers are getting worse and they're predicting, really bad scenarios for us. Um,
Well, we check your numbers every day, and we are shocked at the like last night it was like over 130,000 new cases. I mean, we are shocked by your totals on a daily basis. Um, of course, you have like your population is huge. Um, I mean, but it's always shocking. It's always shocking to see how many infections there are, and especially like knowing how tough it has been and how many people has passed on because of it. Like shocked to see these totals rising and seeing people like always when there's a video, it's like people aren't wearing masks. There's not social distancing. I mean, obviously, this is also the videos just that we see. It's not like I have gone to look for some videos that show people wearing masks. I am sure there are people, of course, but
right.
your numbers are constantly just like sky high.
Yeah.
It's
It,
scary.
it is. It is. It's frightening.
It's
I mean,
really scary.
yesterday I went out to go get some food and I was at um, this restaurant, but it's like you stay outside, like you don't go inside. And you place an order at a window and they have signs up saying, please wear your mask while you're on the premises. So while you're around,
Hmm.
please wear your mask. I think out of the like 20 people that were there at the time, I think I was one of three that had a mask on.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, it always amazes me when I go out and I see people, you know,
Yeah.
la di da
But
da.
like you say, it's really what people are being fed, like what news they're getting, and also what leadership they get. I remember the first time our president spoke, putting on his mask. I don't have an extra mask in my room, but I remember he put his mask on and it went straight into his eyes. And there were so many memes all over the internet. But the best part of it was that he laughed and he was like, it's something to get used to. Like, we're not used to putting on a mask. In South Africa, we don't wear masks. Like, so it was so funny because it's something that happens to everyone. Like, we have all, like, you put on a mask and one of the straps just snips and it hits you in the face or something. Like, just get used to it. Get masks, just wear them. Like, seriously, if it can help save only one person, it's already
Yeah,
something, you know?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've had. I don't know how it is over or how it's been over there, but I always talk about the fact that for Americans specifically, that change is difficult. So anytime that there's change, and I can call it progress, in anything that changes, it's always met with some resistance. Always.
Of course.
There's always some level of resistance just because it's different. And it's that whole
Yeah.
idea. Then once people get used to it, it becomes the norm, you know,
Yeah.
like wearing seatbelts, when you drive. At one time,
Exactly.
you didn't, that wasn't a mandate, and then it became one, right?
Yeah.
Any normal, a number of things like, well, as a performer, I don't know how, again, I don't know how it is over there, but like in performance venues, generally there's no smoking.
Yeah.
like in a concert hall or something like that, right? Um, for what you would think would be obvious reasons, so the performers, can breathe, right?
Yeah.
Right. um, but there was a period of time where there was resistance to that when that was instituted, saying, you know,
Mhm.
um, at the time I was living in Southern California when they first instituted some of those laws, saying that in restaurants and in performance venues that you couldn't smoke. And yeah, people resisted that. They're like, you're infringing on my rights. Like, wow, like you can't see the
I think in South Africa we we do speak up about things, but I do believe that there's a stronger sense of what rights you have as a citizen in America, or what we see is that there's a stronger right. Like, I will not wear a mask because it's not law. Where we don't necessarily, like, most of the country doesn't react like that in South Africa. So I think,
Mm.
I'm not sure if I would have said this at the beginning of the year, but I think we have actually done really well where we could. I think it's been handled really well, and it's been received better than a lot of people would have thought,
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I
honestly.
was I was really curious about that. Like the differences in different countries and how, yeah, just how they reacted to uh,
Yeah.
different information or different scenarios, especially where it involved them having to make some sacrifice. You know.
Yeah, well, even in there's my grandmother is in a retirement village, um, and even like 20 kilometers from her retirement village, there's another one. And out of I think there are 15 people in the ward where the sicker people are, and 13 of the 15 people passed on because of COVID.
Yeah.
However, in my grandmother's retirement village, they literally closed the doors and they said, no one is allowed. They do not care what the reason would be, you are not allowed. And they haven't had a single case. So there's definitely this thing of, like, how you react to the rules, and how serious you are, or the people in charge of your companies. I mean, we put a whole opera on stage, a fully staged opera, and no one got COVID. Our, we had a 6-week rehearsal period, and the rules were so strict that no one no one got COVID. One person on the production team got COVID, which, I mean, it's not part of the artists, and but no one else got it. So those all the correct measures were there, and everyone took all that precautions into their stride, and they really made sure that they adhere to everything. So it is
Yeah.
possible.
Right. Right. Exactly. Um, I
Yeah.
don't know how much you follow sports in America, but are you familiar with uh, NFL, NBA, and professional baseball? Okay. So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the sport, but I know what it is.
oh, okay, okay. So, each of those, I'll just call them industries. Each one had to make decisions for themselves as to how, like, if they were going to come back and try to have a season, how they were going to
Yeah.
do it with regards to COVID and everything. So, uh, baseball and football decided to, kind of move ahead. They had some restrictions, some testing, but overall, they just kind of just moved ahead, business as usual, with the only real restrictions being spectators in the stands coming
Yeah.
to watch. So those would either be limited or not allowed at all. So
Yeah.
the NBA basketball, they chose to take all their remaining teams because when the lockdown happened, they were in the middle of a season. And so they took the remaining teams and they isolated them at Disney World. So they took,
Oh.
they utilized the fact that that was shut down, and they took all
Yeah.
their hotels and spaces and made conversions and everything and they basically took all those teams and put them on their own lockdown so that outside
Wow.
people couldn't come in. They did testing every day. They took all these extreme measures and not one case. So they were able to finish out
Wow.
the entire thing, nothing. The other two
Exactly.
industries, because they didn't take those extreme measures, they got cases, had to cancel games, people would get sick,
Yeah,
all that sort of thing. But it's really
exactly.
funny though, because there's a huge segment of population here in America that kind of mocked the NBA. They actually made fun of them
Wow.
and teased them and said bad things about them when
Yeah.
they had the actual best result. They,
Mm-hmm.
so
Exactly.
yeah, so
Wow.
it's just interesting.
Wow. But it's totally, I mean, it's really a mind shift, and also like your daily life changes. But it's definitely, you can change it. It's not impossible.
Right, right,
So you can change it.
yes,
You can learn. You can learn to change it and to adapt.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let me shift for a second to a different topic.
Yeah.
And I mean, feel free to say whatever you want, but um, I wanted to ask you about, were you aware of everything that happened, like with George Floyd and uh, the protests for racial injustice that were happening in America?
Yes, um we followed it, and we had discussions about it. And definitely we also had some strong opinions in South Africa.
Could you share some of that?
Again, you had groups of people who really supported it, supported the Black Lives Matter. Um, I think that the news that we got around that topic, and I am definitely speaking from a place of white privilege and entitlement. Um, so my opinion is merely based on what I've read or what we've discussed on this side. Um, that it isn't about the wrong of what the person did. The whole movement that we experienced after that was that it's important to say that Black Lives Matter, and it's important to stand up for it, because there is a kind of uh, um, now I have to think in English. There is a certain way that things are happening that it shouldn't happen.
Mm.
That it shouldn't have happened in that way. Um, at the same time as the Black Lives Matter, we also had a very big thing in South Africa with our farmers being killed, and
Oh wow.
senseless killings. So there's also a very, very big movement for that has been for a few years, really, but it has not received, according to those sources, the attention that it should have received. So it escalated at the same time. So we had the Black Lives Matter, we had the farm murders, and then we had extreme gender-based violence at the same time. So it's like the coronavirus pandemic hit South Africa and all of the other pandemics. And I think the big thing that South Africans were speaking about was systemic racism. That is definitely something to be discussed where we stay. And also, what they spoke about was the senseless merging and rape that we experience in, especially South Africa. It's extreme, and especially during the lockdown. This year was intense with the number of gender-based violence situation that we had, and murders. Like,
Wow.
it just came to a point, yeah, during the lockdown. There was a request made to the president to please address this on national TV when he speaks about the coronavirus pandemic. that he also speaks about the gender-based violence pandemic that we are experiencing. And during the lockdown, our country also suffered severe corruption problems. And it's an ongoing matter where the coronavirus funds that were raised to support families that really needed the support, it was all stolen, and mostly stolen by people in government positions. So, I mean, we didn't just get the coronavirus. We had several serious matters that hit us and became so important in this very time.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
And it's just, it's terrible.
well, that was one of the questions that crossed my mind to ask you too. Was um, like, so here in America, we, um, like our government debated this whole thing about a stimulus package, which was intended to give to households, to ordinary people, but also to businesses to keep them going uh,
Yeah.
during this time, right? And I was curious if that happened with you. Did it, did those come from your government, or was it from some other
There,
source?
yeah, there was government funded grants as well as privately funded grants. However, a very big amount of those payouts went to either people that's deceased already, that was just still on the system, people that didn't exist, um, and a lot of it was stolen. It's ridiculous. It's really bad. We have a huge problem in South Africa with people who don't have jobs and families that's really struggling. And this grant is literally what they wait for every month. And a lot of people didn't get it in the times when they really needed it.
Oh wow! And so in your case, it was supposed to be a monthly stipend of some
Yeah.
sort.
Yes.
Wow, wow, that makes so
Yeah.
much sense. That makes so much sense. Well, we didn't do it that way. We said, here's a check, hope try to make that last, and then they're still
Yeah.
debating a second one. Like they're still debating.
Well, because I mean, our grant is also it's this small. It's impossible to live from it. It's really impossible. But I mean, if you know that you're gonna get that, and you go stand in that line to get it, and they just close the doors and say, "No, we can't help you because there's no money." What
Wow.
do you do? Like, where do you turn to?
Right.
And some of my choir kids, I can say this because I won't mention them, but some of my choir kids were in that position and they had nothing. I mean, nothing.
Wow.
Yeah. What do you do? What does a parent do? What does a child do that's running the household?
Wow.
I mean, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things that frustrates me personally. I I think I say this every week. There are points when I say to myself, um, I wish I didn't care so much because
No.
some, just what I mean, like just the pain of knowing that what human beings are doing to other human beings is just maddening to me.
It's
Because
ridiculous.
and you talked about it earlier about what's possible, and that's really our motto is embrace the possible, and knowing that anything is possible once you decide, once you get it in your mind, anything is possible. And so, like, how often like, for instance, how many times do our governments talk about, um, you know, there are different proposals that are put up of we need money in this area, we need money in that area, and the government says there is no money, we can't do it. But then suddenly something tragic happens and they have the money for it. It's like, no, it's the will, it's your decision of whether or not that's important, and the
Yeah.
will to make it happen, just to go for it and do it.
Yeah, and to prioritize. Our priorities are definitely different. Everyone's priorities are different. and no two people has the same priorities or needs, and you really would rely on the people in charge to make the right decisions and to not be corrupt or to not steal money or to not make wrong choices. You really
Right.
want to be comfortable to rely on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't always happen like that. Well, it mostly doesn't happen like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
and that's what keeps me up at night. That's what bugs me.
exactly. And I also feel like I actually just had a conversation with my parents and my sister about it, that I feel things so intensely. Like, all my friends know that I'm an emotional person. I feel every person that I work with or that I've worked with before. I always feel their struggles or their needs so intensely that I would look at my life and what I'm doing and try to accommodate their needs.
Mm,
And in the pandemic, it just hit me that it's impossible. It is simply impossible to give attention to everyone's needs because there's so many people in need of help and there's so little resources. I remember applying for, it's something silly, but applying for one of my kids. So I asked on Facebook whoever can donate um, in South African Rand to help me. There were 6 choir kids that really needed help. Um, they weren't part of a soup kitchen or of a feeding scheme or anything. They needed help. And I remember someone advertising, one of the local businesses, that you can apply for funding. And I immediately contacted them. And the response came back, they need an ID, they need a proof of residence. And I said, listen, this child doesn't even stay in a house that would have a proof of residence. Um, she doesn't even stay with parents. She kind of just stays in the house. It's impossible. And for that reason, she couldn't be part of their feeding scheme. I mean, it's little things that just wouldn't make sense. But I know that there's reasons for things like this, but it's not always sensible, you know. It doesn't
right.
always work like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously there are rules and procedures that are put in place for a reason, but then there's
Yes.
also common
The
sense.
exception.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What I
And
have also seen was communities come together and do feeding schemes and make feeding schemes, and everyone just puts together what they have to give to help. That was amazing for me. That
yeah.
was really amazing because it's people that's never done something like that. So that's also a good part. You know, everything isn't negative. I just think it's easier to speak about the negatives.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Of
Um,
course.
okay. So can I ask you, and I hope this isn't like super uncomfortable for you, but um, I'm pretty sure you were born post apartheid, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you never really truly experienced that, right? You didn't live
No,
through that period of time.
no.
Um, so I guess my first question is, did is that something you learned about in school?
So it definitely is part of the curriculum that kids do at school. It is part of the education department. Um, it's part of the syllabus that all school kids learn up until today.
Okay. Um,
Yeah.
could you kind of give me and everyone else kind of like an overview of what is taught? Or,
That's tough because there's so many segments, but I do know that one of the students I helped during lockdown, she was learning about how slavery worked in South Africa specifically, and how in that times, and this was about 1980 something that they are learning about at this stage. They just started high school now, so I'm not sure that they are about 14 years old. I'm not sure how that would fit into your schooling system. Um, but they were learning about how slaves were they weren't in this stage, they weren't bought to come work in Cape Town, however, or in South Africa. They were lured here with the idea of you're going to have money and you're going to have place to stay, but those weren't the conditions that they arrived to. So I know that that's what the 14-year-olds learn, and they learn how the workers' lives became the lives of the employer, and how families had to live in small quarters and they weren't allowed to, for example, they weren't paid in money but in alcohol. That started the whole alcohol problem anyways, so
Wow.
they learn about that part of the history. However, our history with apartheid and everything is way bigger than the chapter that they learn at school, and I don't have enough knowledge to speak about it, but I do know, like I said earlier, there's definitely a problem with systemic racism. We definitely are not free of the problems that was caused years ago.
Right. Yeah.
We are a democratic country, and we do try to cross those bridges, but I do think it's also impossible if you don't understand. So when I speak about it, I don't understand. I wasn't part of it, and also the aftermath of it wouldn't have been as extreme for me as a friend that I work with, for example. So I think it's impossible to summarize something. And when it comes back to what kids learn at school, it's also every grade learns something else. And when they choose their subjects to specialize in high school, they can also choose history. And I know that then they work on that more, and they go more in depth, but I don't know what they discuss. I have never taught that subject, so I
Well,
won't be too great.
oh no, that's fair. So let me pose it from this point of view. So when I came to South Africa, obviously I I learned things just from being there, things that I didn't know,
Yeah.
um, like understanding the townships.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that at all in terms of or maybe I can tell you what I think I understand and then you can correct me.
Okay.
Okay. So my understanding is that there were and now exist um, townships which are largely based on race or
Yeah.
or ethnicity, color, something like that, right? So there are black townships, which most of the people would kind of look like me, like my complexion, right? And then
Yes.
then you would have what I understood to be colored townships, which were I never fully understood this, but I'm guessing it's other immigrants and other folks who were lighter skinned than me, but still
Yeah.
were not white.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And
And then I never really heard. I don't think I ever heard of anyone referred to an area that was predominantly white as a township. But is that a thing?
no. Well, I mean, not that I'm aware of, but during lockdown, I did see a video of a white township. However, I have never experienced it. We definitely do have African townships, or like that would be your skin color, yes. And so colored people, they aren't immigrants. The South African has, we have such a huge variety of where we come from. So I think, like, I have a friend in the chorus that would be able to explain this way better than I am, but she comes from the Khoi, and the Khoi sun was years ago, like the inhabitants of South Africa and of Africa. And that's where I think that is a very big part of their history. I'm really bad at this, but there's also this amazing Facebook page, Funny Kaap. It's Afrikaans for From the Cape. And it specifically speaks about the colored inheritance and where they come from, what they stand for, and how would you associate with being colored. Because there's also, of course, that association, like, are you not? There are people who would say they are or who aren't. So, I mean, it's really where you come from and what your ethnicity is, if I can say it like that.
Yeah.
Um, I, but yeah, like I say, there are definitely different townships. So what you experience is right. And I think when you guys were in Kraaifontein, there is a township in Kraaifontein called Bloekombos. Then there's Kraaifontein where you were, where the school is, where I taught, and that isn't a township. That's a town.
Oh, okay.
So that's the difference. I think you can see the difference in living, in the housing structures, and yeah, just you can see the difference when you, like, when you are from South Africa, you know, but I mean, you're asking it from an international point of view, and I'm not sure how to explain it, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you would have seen the difference. I think on the video that you had that time coming to South Africa, there was a segment of school kids, for example, not wearing school uniform.
Mm.
That's a poorer community, which would usually be close to a township. We do have state schools, but the support isn't as great as you would hope. So I guess you can see the differences, like you said.
So with regard to the township, so let's say a black township, are is it strictly economic that they still remain there, economic reasons, or is it still, like, I know historically it's because of race or color, ethnicity, but the existence of them now, is that, would you say that that's primarily just because of history and economics?
I don't know. I'm not sure how to answer that. Um, I'm really not sure how to answer that. I don't know. I also think, uh, I do think it's something that's carried on. I'm sure no one would choose to stay in circumstances that's not the best for them.
Right. Right.
It also depends to exactly what you are referring to when you refer to a township. Like when you were in Kraaifontein, that's not a township, that was a town. The townships are really the places where people don't really have electricity, or they don't really have access to water. They don't really have built houses, but more like structures. So
Right.
if that is what you're referring to, um, I think it's to make ends meet. I don't think,
Uh,
yeah, but that's a personal opinion. I'm not sure how to explain that.
no, that makes a lot of sense though, because
Yeah.
I I assumed that township was a terminology for any town,
No,
and
no,
that's
no,
why I
no.
was
No,
confused.
no. Okay, no. A township is really struggling class, like a lot of people without jobs. Yeah, like I said, structures and not really access to water or electricity. Um, when you get to any place that's built with houses, it would be called a town, or yeah, it won't be a township. I think that's a difference.
Okay. Well, that explains
Yeah.
so much, because that's why I was confused when I said I never ever heard anyone refer to a white township, and so
Yeah, and that's actually funny because I would never know that that was what you understood.
yeah,
That's interesting. It's
yeah,
so, I mean, you grow up. in South Africa understanding that. It's so interesting that
Yeah.
people from different countries won't.
Well, the funniest thing for me was the day that we arrived and we met our bus driver. Um,
Yeah.
I s- I started posing questions to him right away, like as we were leaving the airport, right? Um, because there was there was I overheard discussions where they were discussing black and colored, and I was like, wait, what's the distinction? Because in America, blacks were
Wow.
called colored, right? And so for me, I thought it's the same thing. And he was like, oh no, there's a difference. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? So yeah, it is really interesting to know,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I know. I know. Always when we go on tours, there's always some newspaper or some audience members that wants clarity on that after a show. And I always find it very weird because my upbringing, I'm really grateful for the way that I was brought up. And I will always be grateful to the South African Youth Choir. They gave me a scholarship at school and I got to stay in a hostel with all the choir kids. We stayed together in a hostel. And that's where I learned most of my experience and getting to like really um, it opened my world, you know. You learn different languages, it's different cultures, and South Africa has this extremely rich um, background of cultures, of languages, of everything. So I really wish that everyone would know that, but I'm always shocked on tours that people don't, and that to them it's always amazing if someone is from South Africa. I love it. I love the intention, but I'm always kind of shocked because I also think that most of the idea that people have wouldn't be correct. Like the
right,
idea that people have of South Africa is not correct. Of course, yes, we don't have first world things here as much, but like some people has a really twisted idea of lions in the road or elephants roaming around. I mean, that's not reality. Like it's really not. But you would be surprised how many people really believe that that's how it is.
oh sure, yeah.
I
And so much
know.
of it again is based on what you're exposed to, and for I'd say for most
Exactly. I
Americans,
had a
it's probably mostly movies. You know, like we see
yeah,
movies and you know those things, and so that makes the impression of, well, that must be what everything is like. You know, like
exactly.
so we see these videos and stuff of people on safari, and we
Yeah.
assume that that's what everything is like everywhere, and clearly it's not. Right.
No, it's not. I mean, um, we we do have communities where you have wild animals, but I mean, it's not like people have lions for a pet. It's not like that. Like we have farming communities, but no one farms with lions hanging around. So, but that's really a thing. And I know one of my friends was part of an international movie like 4 years ago, and the part that focused on South Africa was really reflecting that, and I was shocked. I was really shocked. I was like, that's so weird because that's definitely not how it is. And I mean, this was 4 years ago. You can't be that far behind. But
Right.
some people really
Right.
are. And I mean, it's a funny experience.
Well, it's this isn't the same thing, but uh, in some respects, I think you would find it interesting to know that in America, there are or there have been movies and TV shows and things that would depict certain cultures within America in a way that's not truly reflective.
Yeah,
And
I
people
know. It's
believe
shocking.
that. Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. I had a friend, and I think I told this story before, but I'll make a short version of it. I had a friend that I worked with this was years ago out in California, and she was white, and um, we were having some kind type of political discussion. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it she was shocked to know that she made some statement about me saying, uh, well, I don't think that there's a need for this particular program to help Black people in the inner city, help kids and stuff, because look at you. You know, you came out of the ghetto just fine. And
Wow.
like, I didn't grow up in the ghetto. I grew up in the country. Like, I'm like, I lived on
Wow.
2 acres, like my yard was 2 acres of land, and I lived in a brick house with air conditioning, whatever.
Well,
And
we definitely
that
have
was
a different opinion.
yeah, but
If you've not been
that's even
there,
within a country though, within the same
yeah,
country. So, I
I
mean,
know.
granted, America, United States is a big country, but yeah, but you have people here who, even today, I mean, I'm sure you
Yeah.
see, um, well, let me ask it as a question.
Oh,
Do
goodness.
you see, um, like the things politically and the divisions and stuff that are happening in America? Are you aware of any of that stuff?
Yes.
Yes. The look on your face right now.
I
You
mean,
look like
I don't
you're
know if you guys speak about it, but we definitely know about the Trump situation, if that's what you were referring to. And and we actually have like a whole group on Facebook, South Africans against or South Africans for. I'm not sure what our opinion would matter, but there are definitely groups to discuss that.
right, right,
I think I'm blushing. I mean,
yeah, I can just see it in your eyes as soon as I started going there. You're like, do you really want to do this?
I don't know how it works there, but we don't really discuss among people who you would be voting for. Um, I
Hmm.
think usually it's for the lesser of two evils.
Hmm.
It gets to that point. I
Right.
don't know how it works overseas, but we are definitely aware that there's something going on, still going on. Like we see the updates.
Okay. Well,
But also,
go ahead.
I watched this amazing Netflix documentary. Um, cannot believe that I can't imagine what the name is now. But it's about the social dilemma, and it's about how social media feeds you. Um, I'm reading someone's comment. The Trump situation very diplomatic. I mean, I have to be. I don't know, but the social dilemma explains it so well because it's literally what you like would speak about. That's the info you would get, and that's the info you will get a lot of the topic that you will receive info about, and
Right.
it's definitely you won't see everything. You would see something according to your profile and what your likes or dislikes would have been, so it's difficult to say if we're getting a true reflection. And I mean, how true would our reflection be if we don't live in America? And how true can your idea be of what's happening here if you don't live here? I mean, so it's kind of
Right.
impossible, but we are definitely aware of some happenings.
Well, let me ask you just in a broader sense, without being specific to any specific or particular politician or government official. Um, Historically, in your lifetime, how do you think that South Africans view America?
I mean, we kind of have
Hard.
the burger and fries idea. That's the first thing that pops into my mind if you say America. And
Okay.
I think that, it's totally different. It's totally based on where in South Africa you would be. But I do think we have a very uninformed knowledge to make any kind of comment. If you're not living in a certain place, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't even be able to understand because you cannot compare it to something that you know. I mean, your government sent masks to everyone. Well, that I heard from all my friends that they received a mask in 95 or something. I know, a
Right,
good
right.
mask. Well, we didn't get masks. You had to you have to go buy a mask if you want one.
We did too.
So
Yeah.
we thought, wow, the whole of America got masks, and not cheap masks, like really great masks, and it's amazing.
No,
You
that's
see,
yeah.
you see.
Yeah, that's
So I
right.
mean, I
Yeah.
don't think you would ever know if you're not staying somewhere. Um,
Yeah.
you just won't
Well,
know.
well, um, I know I'm kind of over time, and I've taken you longer than I promised, but um, I did kind of just want to end with um, you are a person because of your performing. You've had, like you've spoken of as privilege before, but you've had the opportunity to travel quite a bit, right? To go to other countries and and experience other cultures, right? And even through your music, I would say I would at least guess that some of the music itself allows you to explore different cultures because you're singing,
Yes,
right? Right.
yes.
So, um, so I would say that both of us, to some degree, are fortunate that we get to do that. That not everyone, most people do not get to experience what we've experienced. And I'm not trying to put myself on your level because I know you're on a different level for me, but
Please.
but
Oh,
you know what I
please.
mean. Like,
We definitely we do. We are busy working on an African American spirituals concert. Um, that will be we will be doing in December, and I mean, I'm learning so much by just learning the music. It's amazing.
wow.
Yes, and reading up about it. I mean, it's amazing because again, coming back to, okay, when you sing Down by the Riverside, you think, oh, okay, this is the story. Or if you sing Wade in the Water, you think, oh, okay, this is what it's about. It's
Mm,
not. Go read about it. Go
yeah.
explore the real intense meaning behind the music. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
no one just writes a song without any thoughts. There's some kind of thought process, and especially this rich pieces that we get from history, like there's such a strong history attached to it, and it's so important that you have to know.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah.
And we
um,
are fortunate. I was really looking forward to a possible tour that we were going to have to uh, the States next year, January, which won't happen now. But
oh,
I was looking forward to it because I've never been there. I've been in Canada, which now also contributes to the conversation. Like, is that a part of America or not? Like, that's still the picture that we get. Like, you're not really,
yeah.
like, you don't know. But anyway, so I've been there when I was 14 years old on a choir tour. And I've always wanted to go to America. It's like a thing. And I was so excited to get the opportunity, which now we won't get. But I know in future we will work together, me and you. We're
Yeah.
still going to do something with belief, and I will come to America and I'll experience it. And then we should redo this conversation so I could give a true opinion of what I experienced in
Right. Right.
America.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out. I know it's late there and you've already had a long day. Um,
My
but
sister just knocked at my door and she's like, I have to teach very early. Are you going to
oh,
finish some other time?
please
But I mean,
apologize to her for me. I'm so sorry.
I love being on your show and I wish we can do it more often. And I wish our time difference wasn't this big um, because I love it. I mean, we can probably talk for another 5 hours without even looking at the time.
Exactly. Well, you know what?
Yeah,
Maybe
we
what we can do is because I was thinking about this with regard to the other countries and everything. Maybe I'll, continue this, on Sundays at this time, but then also do one at a different time that's so that my international friends can, that makes sense for them, so it may be
Yeah,
a little hard
exactly.
for me, but good for you guys.
Yeah. Well, I would really be keen to do it. I always love it. And I always feel like I get something out of this conversation because I still learn things that I don't know. And you kind of feel like, what's there to learn? We all know about the pandemic and blah, blah, blah. But you really don't, like I said, you don't know if you're not in the country where something is going well or something's not going well. So it's
Right.
really so informative always. And I wish we can speak longer.
Yeah. Well, we will. We'll do it again. We'll most
We
certainly
will.
do it again. Thank
Yes.
you so, so much.
It's my
Have
pleasure.
a
Stay
good night.
safe and keep wearing your mask.
Always. Yes.
Yeah, will do.
Careful. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. It went a little over time, but as you just heard, we could have kept going on and on. There's so much to discuss and so much to learn. I definitely learned something from the conversation, and I hope that you did as well. I did want to let you know that next week, I just want to give you a preview of next week. I'm really excited that my guest next week is an Emmy Award winning actress, beautiful lady. She's also an educator and a good friend. Melissa Hayden will be my guest next week. And so we'll be talking about lots of things, including her particular, I mean, she's done lots of things, obviously, but her Emmy and her early career had a lot to do with, I shouldn't say early career because she did a lot as a child, but anyway, with soap operas. So daytime, soap operas and stuff. So if you have any friends or family members who are into soap operas, I grew up watching soap operas. My mom and my aunts and stuff. I was really into Days of Our Lives and The Doctors, if you remember that. That was a long time ago. Another World, Somerset. As I got older, I got into General Hospital, One Life to Live, and what's the one that had Nadia's theme as the theme to it? Young and the Restless, The Young and the Restless. So some of those shows, right? And I'm not ashamed to admit it. Yeah, I actually like those shows a lot. So anyway, hopefully we'll get a glimpse into some of that and just uh, the world of television and movies and all that stuff. So I'm excited to have her on next week. So tune in. It'll be back at the normal time at 3 p.m. Central Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time, and 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay. I have to do all the math in my head as I'm saying it. Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching Believe. Uh, Again, thank you guys for your support. If you're watching it on replay, please go ahead and leave messages and I'll be happy to respond. And be safe out there. Please be careful. This pandemic, COVID, is real, and I have so many friends. I have a number of friends who've contracted it. Uh, most have made it through. Some are dealing with some lingering after effects, which aren't so great. So please be safe out there, and realize that it's not just for you; it's for others, right? It's not just you, and it's not trying to infringe on your rights. It's just trying to keep folks safe and just taking simple, reasonable, practical measures that will help us to do that. So, anyway, thank you guys again. We will see you guys next time.